A single pregnant mother enrolled her son in the school, attended by the daughter of a billionaire. When they met, secrets came to light, and their lives changed forever in unexpected ways. A story of destiny and overcoming that will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like and comment on where you are watching from. The sun had not yet risen when Sarah Johnson crossed the gates of the Faria Lima business building, carrying her bucket of cleaning supplies and a tired smile that hid the anxiety of the day ahead. At 28, she had learned that life rarely offered second chances, but today was different. Today, Ethan would start at St. Francis Academy, one of the most prestigious educational institutions in Chicago. "Mom, are you sure I can do this?" Ethan asked for the 10th time that week, nervously adjusting the new backpack Sarah had bought with her overtime pay. At 8 years old, the boy already showed a maturity that broke his mother's heart. Son of a woman who worked 3 shifts to support the household, he had learned early to read the worries in her eyes. Sarah knelt before her son in their small 2-room apartment in Southside, where they had lived since she became pregnant. The peeling walls and simple furniture contrasted with the fierce determination in her dark brown eyes, inherited from her grandmother from the South, who raised her with an iron fist and a heart of gold. "Ethan, my love, you are smarter than any child I know. Remember when you helped me calculate how many tiles we needed to renovate the bathroom? Or when you drew that perfect house on the back of the electricity bill?" Sarah held her son's face in her calloused hands. "You were born for great things, my angel, and this school will be just the first step." The journey to the school took 2 hours on public transportation. Ethan watched through the bus window as the scenery gradually changed. From the simple buildings and local shops of the outskirts to the mirrored skyscrapers and tree-lined streets of the upscale neighborhoods in Chicago. Sarah noticed how her son's eyes absorbed every architectural detail, commenting on the differences in building materials and urban planning. "Look, Mum, that building has a different structure. It looks like they used exposed concrete, just like that book you brought from the library." "About the architect Frank Lloyd Wright." Ethan pointed to a modern building. Sarah smiled proudly. Even without resources for formal education, she had always nurtured her son's curiosity with borrowed books and magazines found in the offices where she worked. St. Francis Academy stood majestically in Maplewood, with its well-kept gardens and architecture that blended colonial elements with modern touches. The main building, made of exposed brick and large glass windows, radiated a discreet elegance that intimidated Sarah. She always knew there were 2 Americas, hers, where every penny was counted, and this one, where 7-year-olds arrived in imported cars with private drivers. "Ms. Johnson, I'm Ms. Anderson, the principal of the school. Welcome." Ms. Anderson was a 55-year-old woman with graying hair neatly tied in an elegant bun, radiating natural authority tempered by genuine kindness. She had dedicated 30 years of her life to education, fervently believing that knowledge was the only tool capable of transforming destinies. "Thank you so much for the opportunity, Ms. Anderson. I promise Ethan won't disappoint," Sarah replied, trying to control the tremor in her voice. The principal noticed the tension and smiled understandingly. "Sarah, you don't need to promise anything. Ethan is here because he deserves to be. The scholarship program exists precisely to identify talents like his." Ms. Anderson guided mother and son through the hallways decorated with students' artistic works. "Our commitment is to provide the best education for all children, regardless of their background." Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Michael Thompson was finishing a video conference in his office on the 23rd floor of one of the buildings his own construction company had erected. At 42, he carried the weight of having inherited a business empire at 30, when his father unexpectedly died of a heart attack. Thompson and Sons was one of the largest construction companies in Chicago, responsible for shopping centers, luxury condominiums, and corporate complexes that shape the skyline of the metropolis. "Dad, you didn't forget that I start at the new school today, right?" Emma appeared at the office door, wearing the impeccable uniform of St. Francis Academy. At 7 years old, she was a perfect blend of Michael's features, piercing blue eyes and natural determination, with the aristocratic delicacy she inherited from her mother. Michael felt a pang of guilt, realizing he had almost forgotten. Since the tumultuous divorce from Lisa 6 months earlier, he had been burying himself in work to avoid thinking about the loneliness that now defined his routine. Shared custody worked mathematically. Emma spent 1 week with him, 1 week with her mother, but emotionally it was a disaster for everyone involved. "Of course I didn't forget, Princess. Let's go see your new school together." Michael shut down the computer and grabbed the keys to his Audi. The school was a strategic choice, prestigious enough to impress his social circles, but with a reputation for a well-rounded education that might help Emma develop values beyond the materialism that dominated their family life. The meeting of the two worlds happened in the schoolyard, where children played during recess. Ethan watched shyly from the corner, still getting used to the environment, when a ball rolled in his direction. Emma ran after the ball, breathless. "Hi, are you new here?" she asked without ceremony, as only children can do. "I'm Emma, but you can call me Em. Today is my first day too." "I'm Ethan. I got a scholarship to study here." The response came naturally, without hesitation. Ethan felt a mix of shame and excessive pride. Sarah had taught her son to always speak the truth with dignity. "Cool. Do you want to play with me? I don't know anyone here yet." Emma reached out her hand to Ethan, and in that simple gesture, two completely different realities touched for the first time. During the science class that morning, something happened that would change the course of history. Ms. Roberts was showing a model of the new wing of the school that was being built, explaining basic concepts of architecture. Ethan raised his hand shyly. "Ms. Roberts, can I ask a question?" His voice was low but clear. "Shouldn't this beam be thicker? With such a large span, it might not support the weight of the upper slab." The room fell silent. Ms. Roberts, who had a degree in education with a specialization in science, looked at the model and realized that the boy was right. The construction company responsible had made a technical mistake that she hadn't noticed. "Ethan, how do you know this?" she asked, amazed. "My mom always draws houses at home. She explains to me how structures work, about beams, columns, and foundations. She says that understanding how things are built helps us understand how the world works." Ethan spoke with the naturalness of someone who had grown up absorbing technical knowledge as others absorb bedtime stories. Emma looked at her new friend with admiration. In her home, adults talked about money, business, and social status. She had never met a child who could explain why buildings don't fall down. The news of Ethan's technical comment reached Michael by the end of the afternoon, when Ms. Roberts mentioned the incident to Ms. Anderson during the weekly teachers' meeting. The principal, intrigued, discussed the case with some parents as they picked up their children. One of our new students on a scholarship made a very insightful technical observation about the construction of the new wing. "It seems his mother works in the field," Ms. Anderson casually mentioned to Michael, who was waiting for Emma to finish packing her backpack. "Interesting. What's the boy's name?" Michael asked, more out of politeness than genuine curiosity. "Ethan Johnson. His mother is Sarah, a very dedicated woman. She works night shifts to support her son." Ms. Anderson had no idea she was planting the first seed of a connection that would transform lives. That night, Sarah returned to the Faria Lima building for her work shift. As always, she started on the 23rd floor, where Thompson & Sons was located. The office was empty, but a light still on in the main room caught her attention. Michael had stayed late reviewing contracts. Sarah knocked on the door before entering. "Excuse me, sir. May I clean, or would you prefer I come back later?" Michael looked up from the documents and saw a young woman with brown hair tied back in a ponytail, wearing a simple but impeccable uniform, looking at him with respect, but without servility. Something in her eyes, determination mixed with fatigue, made him stop writing. "You can come in, it's no problem. Have you worked here long?" he asked, returning his attention to the papers. "2 years, sir. Always on the night shift." Sarah began to organize the trash bins and clean the surfaces with silent efficiency. Michael continued working, but found himself discreetly observing the meticulous dedication with which she performed each task. There was something in that woman's posture that intrigued him, a natural dignity that contrasted with the humility of her role. When Sarah finished and politely said goodbye, Michael was left thinking. He didn't yet know he had just met the mother of the boy who had impressed the school that very day. He didn't know that this woman had self-taught architectural knowledge. He didn't know that she dreamed every night of houses she could never build, but drew them anyway, feeding hopes that reality insisted on challenging. The first day at school ended with Ethan and Emma saying goodbye as if they were longtime friends. Sarah, waiting at the entrance with other parents and staff, saw Michael's daughter wave cheerfully at her son. She had no idea that this childhood friendship would be the thread that wove a transformation that would change not only their lives, but the entire community around them. 3 weeks passed since the first day of school, and the routine had established itself in Sarah's life almost mathematically. Waking up at 5:30 a.m., preparing breakfast and taking Ethan to school, returning home for a few hours of sleep, working from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. cleaning houses in West Side, picking Ethan up from school, having dinner together while he talked about his day, and finally heading to her night shift at Faria Lima. It was a perfect gear that operated with the precision of someone who couldn't afford to fail. However, that April morning, Sarah woke up with a strange feeling. Nausea hit her like a violent wave as soon as she put her feet on the floor. She ran to the bathroom, trying to muffle the sound so she wouldn't wake Ethan. But the nausea persisted, even after her empty stomach had nothing left to expel. "It can't be," she murmured to herself, looking at her reflection in the small, stained bathroom mirror. But deep down she already knew. The signs were unmistakable. The same excessive fatigue she had felt when she discovered she was pregnant with Ethan, the same sensitivity to smells that hadn't bothered her before. Ethan appeared at the bathroom door, his hair tousled and a worried expression on his face. "Mum, are you feeling sick? Do you want me to do something?" Sarah forced a smile, drying her face with a faded towel. "It's nothing, my love. It must be something I ate yesterday. Shall we get ready for school?" During the bus ride, Sarah tried to process the possibility that haunted her. David, Ethan's biological father, had disappeared as soon as he learned of the pregnancy 8 years ago. Now Mark, the man she had been involved with in recent months, also wasn't the type of person to. Marina was unsure who she could trust. She worked as a night security guard for a company downtown and had promised things that Sarah, in her experience, knew men like him rarely delivered. "Mom, Emma said her dad is going to fund a garden at school. She asked if you could help because she knows about plants," Ethan commented, interrupting his mother's turbulent thoughts. Sarah smiled genuinely for the first time that morning. Since childhood, she'd taken care of a small garden in her grandmother's backyard in Maplewood. Even in the tiny apartment where they lived now, she kept pots of herbs on the kitchen window, basil, mint and rosemary that grew defying the lack of space and proper light. "Of course I can help, but tell me, how is your friendship with Emma going? You two are very different." Sarah chose her words carefully, not wanting to plant any seeds of insecurity in her son. Ethan thought for a moment, watching the city's movement through the window. She's nice, Mom. She's not like the other rich kids at school who keep talking about video games and vacations. She likes to listen when I explain how buildings are constructed, and she tells funny stories about the place where she lived before. At school, the friendship between Ethan and Emma had become the subject of whispered conversations among some parents. Lisa Montenegro, Eduardo's ex-wife, had started a subtle but poisonous campaign questioning the appropriateness of social mixing at the institution. Sarah, don't you think we should be more selective with the scholarships? I mean, these kids come from very different realities. Can they keep up not just academically, but socially? Lisa spoke during the monthly parent council meeting, her sweet voice hiding the toxicity of the insinuation. Ms. Anderson, with her 30 years of experience in education, recognized this type of prejudice masked as pedagogical concern. Lisa, social diversity enriches the school environment. Ethan has excelled in all subjects and shown exemplary maturity. Yes, of course, the boy seems smart, but I worry about the influence that these differences might have on our children. Emma, for example, has been talking a lot about the simplicity of her friend's house. We don't want her to develop unnecessary complexes about our family situation, Lisa continued, adjusting the pearl necklace that cost more than Sarah earned in a year. On the other side of the city, Eduardo was in a video conference with suppliers when his assistant discreetly interrupted. Mr. Eduardo, the school called. Nothing serious, but they would like to discuss some projects involving Emma. Eduardo ended the meeting and called Ms. Anderson. The principal explained about the community garden project that had naturally emerged among the children, led by the friendship between Ethan and Emma. The idea is interesting. Emma has been talking a lot about plants at home. How can I help? Eduardo asked, genuinely interested in any activity that would make his daughter show enthusiasm. Well, the interesting thing is that Ethan's mom, Sarah, seems to have technical knowledge about gardening. We were thinking of inviting her to coordinate the project. Could your company provide the basic materials? Ms. Anderson explained the plan that was taking shape. Eduardo immediately agreed, but something intrigued him. The name Sarah sounded familiar, although he couldn't place where he had heard it before. That afternoon, Sarah was cleaning a mansion in Hilltop when the owner, Dr. Smith, unexpectedly arrived home. She was a renowned doctor who had always treated Sarah with genuine respect. "Sarah, are you feeling unwell? You look very pale," Dr. Smith observed, finding Sarah sitting on the stairs, trying to control another episode of nausea. Sarah hesitated for a moment, but something in the doctor's concerned voice made her decide to trust. "Doctor, I think I might be pregnant, but I can't take the test right now and—" "Let's sort this out right away. I have some tests in my office. You can come with me now?" Dr. Smith interrupted, demonstrating the practical kindness that made her a respected physician. An hour later, Sarah was looking at the positive pregnancy test result with a mix of panic and resignation. Dr. Smith observed her reaction with professional compassion. "Sarah, you have options, and you have support. What is your main concern right now?" the doctor asked gently. "Doctor, I can barely support Ethan. If I lose my job because of the pregnancy, and the father of the child is not a reliable person." Sarah felt the tears she had been holding back all morning finally escape. "First, let's ensure proper prenatal care. Second, you won't lose your job for being pregnant. That's illegal. And third, you're not alone. I will help you navigate through all of this." Dr. Smith spoke with the authority of someone who had helped hundreds of women in similar situations. That night, Eduardo worked later than usual, reviewing contracts for the new wing of the school. Ethan's technical comment about the structure had prompted him to investigate, and he discovered that the boy was right. There was an error in the design that could have been costly if not detected in time. When Sarah arrived for the night cleaning, Eduardo was still in the office. This time he watched her more closely as she worked. There was something different about her, a fragility that hadn't been present in previous weeks. "Are you okay? You look tired," Eduardo asked without thinking, surprising himself with his own question. Sarah stopped cleaning and looked him directly in the eyes. For a moment he saw beyond the uniform and the role. He saw a young woman carrying invisible weights that he would probably never fully understand. "I'm fine, sir. Thank you for asking." The response was polite but reserved. Sarah had learned that showing vulnerability at work rarely resulted in compassion. Eduardo returned to the documents, but he couldn't concentrate. There was something in that woman's voice that disturbed him, a wounded dignity that echoed vague memories of his own childhood, when his mother fell ill, and he learned early on that life could be cruel to good people. Later that week, in art class at school, Ethan drew a house that was different from the usual children's creations. It was technically perfect, with appropriate proportions and architectural details that impressed the teacher, Ms. Roberts. "Ethan, where did you learn to draw like this?" Ms. Roberts asked, analyzing the precise lines and the evident spatial understanding in the drawing. "My mom teaches me. She draws houses every day. She says that even if we live in a small place, we can dream of big spaces," Ethan replied naturally. Ms. Roberts took a photo of the drawing and showed it to Ms. Anderson during the break. The principal was impressed with the technical quality and artistic sensitivity of the creation. "Ms. Anderson, this child has exceptional talent. And if his mother really draws with this technical precision, perhaps we should learn more about her background," Ms. Roberts suggested. That afternoon, Ms. Anderson called Sarah Johnson. The conversation was revealing. Sarah confirmed that she had studied technical drawing through free courses offered by the community center, and that she kept notebooks full of architectural projects created in her spare time. "Sarah, I would love to see some of your drawings. Would it be possible for you to come to school one of these days to talk about the garden project?" Ms. Anderson suggested, driven by a keen educational intuition. When Sarah hung up the phone, she felt a mix of hope and terror. Showing her drawings meant exposing her innermost dreams, those she nurtured in secret during the early mornings after work, but it could also mean an opportunity to be seen as something beyond a cleaner. That night, she pulled out from under the bed the notebook where she kept her projects. She flipped through the pages filled with simple yet well-designed houses, functional commercial spaces, and even a community center she had dreamed of building in her neighborhood one day. Ethan found her like that, sitting on the narrow bed, surrounded by drawings. "Mom, are you going to show your projects to the school?" Sarah looked at her son, the boy who had become her greatest motivation to keep dreaming. "I think I will, my love, even if it's scary." "You don't need to be afraid, Mom. Your drawings are the most beautiful I've ever seen," Ethan said, with the absolute sincerity that only children possess. That early morning, while Ethan slept and the city breathed more slowly, Sarah made a decision. Regardless of the challenges that pregnancy would bring, regardless of fears about the future, she would find a way to turn her drawings into reality for herself, for Ethan, and for the child growing in her womb. Sarah arrived at St. Francis Academy on a May afternoon with a worn, synthetic leather folder under her arm containing her most precious drawings. She had spent the entire morning vomiting. The pregnancy nausea seemed worse in recent weeks. But she dressed in the best she had, a navy blue blouse that Ethan had received from a generous client and black pants that concealed the discreet beginning of her belly. "Sarah, what a joy to see you here." Miss Anderson welcomed her in the principal's office, a cozy environment decorated with students' artwork and a shelf full of books on pedagogy. "Please have a seat. Would you like some coffee, water?" "Water would be great, thank you," Sarah replied, trying to control the nervousness that made her hands tremble slightly. It was the first time she entered the school, not just as Ethan's mother, but as a person with technical knowledge to offer. Ms. Anderson served water in a glass, not the disposable plastic that Sarah had expected, and sat across from her with genuine curiosity. "Ethan is an exceptional child. Ms. Roberts was impressed with his drawings. He told me that you teach him?" Sarah opened the folder with reverent care, as if handling sacred relics. The first drawing was a floor plan of a modest 600-square-foot house, but each room had been designed with surgical precision, maximizing natural light, cross-ventilation, and multifunctional spaces that allowed for flexible use. I've always liked drawing houses," Sarah began timidly. "When I was a child, my grandmother took me to see the buildings in the neighborhood and explained why some houses were cooler, why some cracked and others didn't. I started paying attention to that." Ms. Anderson examined the drawings with increasing attention. There were at least 20 projects in the folder: houses, a community center, a daycare, even a small market with a gathering area. All demonstrated solid technical knowledge and a social sensitivity that deeply impressed her. "Sarah, this is extraordinary. Where did you study architecture?" Ms. Anderson asked, genuinely confused about how this woman had developed such skills. "I haven't formally studied architecture, Ms. Anderson. I took some technical drawing courses at the community center, borrowed books from the library, and, well, YouTube teaches a lot these days." Sarah smiled shyly. "In the early mornings, after Ethan sleeps, and before I go to work, I spend my time drawing. It's as if the ideas won't leave me alone until I put them on paper." Ms. Anderson felt a shiver. In 30 years of education, she had learned to recognize raw talent when she saw it. "Sarah, have you ever thought about going to college? There are government programs, scholarships." Sarah looked at her calloused hands. "Ms. Anderson, I work 16 hours a day to support my son. I barely have time to sleep, let alone study. And now," she hesitated, "now things are going to get even more complicated." Ms. Anderson picked up on something in the hesitation. Her experience with hundreds of families had taught her to read between the lines. "Sarah, if you need to talk about anything, know that you can count on me. Our role here goes far beyond formal education." At that moment, Emma appeared at the principal's office door, followed by Ethan. Classes had ended, and the children were eager to show Sarah the place where they wanted to develop the garden. "Aunt Sarah!" Emma ran to hug her with the naturalness of someone who already considered her family. "Ethan told me that you know everything about plants. Can you teach us how to plant tomatoes?" Sarah was touched by the girl's spontaneity. In contrast to Ethan's initial shyness, Emma radiated confidence and genuine affection. "Of course I can, Princess. Shall we check out this space?" The group headed to the back of the school, where there was a grassy area of approximately 2,000 square feet. Sarah analyzed the land with technical eyes: sunlight exposure, drainage, proximity to water sources. Mentally, she was already envisioning raised beds, a drip irrigation system, and even a small greenhouse for seedlings. This spot would be perfect for leafy vegetables. Sarah pointed to an area with partial shade. "And over there, where the sun hits directly, we can plant tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants. If we make beds at different levels, we can make better use of the space." Ethan watched his mother with evident pride. Emma asked technical questions that showed genuine curiosity about botany. Miss Anderson took mental notes on how this project could become an interdisciplinary educational tool. "Miss Sarah, my dad said he could help with the materials. He has a construction company," Emma commented innocently. Sarah felt a chill. Accepting financial help from strangers always made her uncomfortable. "That's very kind of your father, Emma. but maybe we can start small with simpler materials." "Don't be too proud, Sarah," Ms. Anderson gently intervened. "If Michael offered to help, it's because he believes in the value of the project, and Emma is very excited about it." At that moment, Michael arrived to pick up his daughter. He had left the office early, something rare, to be more actively involved in Emma's school life. As he approached the group, he saw a young woman kneeling on the lawn, explaining something about soil to two fascinated children. "Dad!" Emma ran towards him. "This is Sarah, Ethan's mom. She's going to teach us how to make the garden." Michael looked at the woman who stood up, brushing dirt off her hands onto her pants. For a moment, something about her seemed familiar, but he couldn't pinpoint what it was. Sarah, in turn, felt intimidated by the man's imposing presence, impeccably tailored suit, expensive watch, posture of someone used to being in charge. "Nice to meet you, Sarah. Michael Thompson," he extended his hand politely. "Emma can't stop talking about the garden project. It's very generous of you to volunteer." "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Thompson. Actually, I'm the one who is gaining. I love working with plants," Sarah replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Michael noticed the firmness of her handshake. Despite her apparent delicacy, there was something in her voice that continued to echo familiarly in his memory. "Miss Anderson told me you have technical knowledge about gardening. Do you work in the field?" Sarah hesitated. "Not exactly. I work in cleaning, but I've always cultivated plants as a hobby. I learned a lot from my grandmother and through self-study." "Dad, Sarah draws beautiful houses, just like you," Emma interrupted, unknowingly revealing more than Sarah would have liked. Michael immediately became interested. "You design projects? What kind of plants?" Miss Anderson noticed Sarah's discomfort and diplomatically intervened. "Michael, how about we discuss the details of the garden project another time? The kids are eager to go home." On the bus ride back, Ethan noticed that his mother was quieter than usual. "Mum, did you like Emma's dad?" Sarah chose her words carefully. "He seems like a good person, Ethan. But they are very different people from us. It's important to always remember that." "Different how?" Ethan asked with the innocent curiosity of children. "Different possibilities in life, my love. Emma's dad can buy anything he wants, solve any problem with money. We have to work hard to get things. It's not better or worse, it's just different," Sarah explained, trying not to plant seeds of resentment in her son. That night, Michael arrived at the office earlier than usual to try to get ahead on some contracts before the cleaning shift began. When Sarah appeared at the door, he had a moment of sudden recognition. "You work here?" he asked, surprised. Sarah felt her face burn with embarrassment. She had hoped he wouldn't make the connection. "Yes, sir. I worked the night shift here for 2 years." Michael was silent for a moment, processing the information. The woman who had impressed Miss Anderson with her technical knowledge, who was going to coordinate the garden project, was the same one who cleaned his office every night. He felt a confusing mix of admiration and discomfort with his previous blindness. "Sarah, can I see some of your architectural drawings that Emma mentioned?" he asked, genuinely interested. Sarah hesitated. "Mr. Thompson, I prefer to keep things separate. My job here is cleaning. The school project is different. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not being condescending. It's just that my company is developing a public housing project, and we always seek new perspectives, especially from those who understand the real needs of the people who will live in those houses," Michael explained, trying to sound professional. Sarah looked him in the eyes, trying to detect any sign of disguised charity. "I'll bring some drawings tomorrow night, but I want you to know that I'm not asking for anything. If my projects don't fit, that's fine." "Perfect. And Sarah?" Michael called as she was already leaving the room. "Thank you for what you're doing for Emma. She hasn't shown this much enthusiasm for something in a long time." Sarah smiled for the first time in that conversation. Ethan is also very happy with the friendship. It's nice to see him connecting with other kids. After Sarah left, Michael was deep in thought. He had discovered in a single afternoon that the mother of the boy who had impressed the school with technical knowledge was also the woman who cleaned his office every night and still possessed self-taught architectural talents. The coincidence seemed impossible, but life had its ironies. The next morning, Sarah woke up with more intense nausea than usual. The pregnancy was entering the 3rd month. She still hadn't told anyone besides Dr. Smith. She looked in the mirror and realized that soon she wouldn't be able to hide her belly anymore. She spent the morning organizing the drawings she would show to Michael, choosing the more technical and less personal ones. There was a project for a housing complex she had created, thinking about the housing problem in her own neighborhood. 500-square-foot units that optimized space and created community areas that encouraged social interaction. Ethan found her organizing the papers at the kitchen table. "Mom, are you going to show the daycare project too?" "That's my favorite." Sarah smiled, touched by the memory of her son. The daycare project had been inspired by the difficulty she herself faced in finding a place to leave Ethan when he was a baby. She had thought of every detail, from the height of the windows to the use of natural light to save on electricity. "Maybe yes, my love, let's see how the conversation develops." Sarah hugged her son, feeling a mix of nervousness and hope. For the first time in years, someone with real resources could look at her dreams as more than just fantasies of a housekeeper. The night was particularly cold when Sarah arrived at the Faria Lima building carrying a folder larger than usual. Her nausea had worsened throughout the day, and she could barely manage to have lunch. Each passing week made hiding her pregnancy more challenging, not just physically but emotionally. The weight of the secret was starting to affect even her relationship with Ethan, who had already asked twice why she seemed strange lately. Michael was waiting for her in the office, but he had set up the environment differently. Instead of remaining behind the imposing desk, he had arranged 2 chairs side by side near the window that offered a panoramic view of the illuminated city. On the side table, there was coffee, water, and some simple cookies. "Sarah, welcome. Please have a seat. I brought something to drink if you need." Michael gestured to the chair, immediately noticing that she looked paler than usual. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Just water is fine," Sarah replied, settling into the chair and placing the folder on her lap like a protective shield. She had mentally rehearsed that conversation all day, but now, in his presence, she felt small and exposed. Michael poured water into a glass and sat next to her, maintaining a respectful distance. "First of all, I want you to know that I am genuinely interested in your projects. Not as a favor or charity, but as a real business opportunity. My company needs new perspectives for affordable housing projects." Sarah slowly opened the folder, pulling out the first drawing. The floor plan of a 500-square-foot apartment. This project came about when I was researching the housing deficit in New York. I thought about how to create functional spaces for low-income families without sacrificing quality of life. Michael examined the drawing with increasing attention. The proportions were perfect. Each room had been designed with surgical precision. The integrated living room and kitchen created a sense of spaciousness. The bedrooms were positioned to ensure acoustic privacy, and there was even a small office that could serve as a study or workspace. "Sarah, this is impressive. How did you address the issue of ventilation?" Michael asked, pointing to the technical markings indicating airflow. "I grew up in a house without proper ventilation. In the summer it was unbearable. In the winter it was damp and moldy. I learned that cross-ventilation can solve many comfort problems without costing anything extra in construction," Sarah explained, her voice gaining confidence as she spoke about something she mastered. Michael continued to examine the drawings, each one more impressive than the last. There was a project for a community centre with a library, computer room, and space for vocational courses. The design of a daycare that utilised natural light and had a protected internal courtyard, a small farmers' market with a gathering area that could function as a cultural centre on weekends. "Where do these ideas come from?" Michael asked, genuinely intrigued. Sarah took a deep breath. "From my life, Mr. Thompson. Each project addresses a problem that I or people close to me have faced. The daycare came about because I needed to leave Ethan with neighbours when he was a baby. The community centre because there is no suitable place for young people in my neighbourhood to study or get vocational training. The market because people in the outskirts deserve beautiful spaces too, not just functional ones." Michael was silent for a few moments, absorbing the depth of that answer. In his business life, he was used to architects who created beautiful projects but disconnected from the real needs of users. Sarah designed with the heart of someone who had lived through each problem she was trying to solve. "Sarah, I need to be direct with you. These projects have the technical quality to be built. I would like to hire you as a consultant for a development we are working on in the East Side. It would be a paid position with a formal contract." Sarah felt her heart race. For a moment, a wild hope blossomed in her chest. Maybe she could finally have a job that utilized her talents, that allowed for more dignified hours, that provided stability to raise Ethan and the baby on the way. But then reality hit her like a bucket of cold water. "Mr. Thompson, I really appreciate the offer, but I need to be honest. I don't have a college degree. I am not a registered architect. Would it be legal for me to sign projects?" Sarah asked, demonstrating an honesty that surprised Michael. "You would work as a social project consultant with a licensed architect responsible for the technical aspects. Your role would be to ensure that the projects meet the real needs of the users. It is completely legal and, in fact, should be mandatory in all housing projects," Michael explained. Sarah looked out the window at the city that stretched infinitely, thinking of all the people who, like her, dreamed of opportunities that seemed impossible. "Can I think about it? It's a very important decision." "Of course. But Sarah, may I ask why you hesitate?" "It's an opportunity to use your talents and earn a better income," Michael said gently. Sarah hesitated, then decided to be partially honest. "I'm afraid I won't be good enough. Afraid of disappointing. And, well, my life is going to get more complicated in the coming months. I don't know if I could dedicate myself properly to the job." Michael noticed something in her voice, a vulnerability that went beyond professional insecurity. "Sarah, if there's something personal that's worrying you, know that serious companies today offer flexibility for family matters." At that moment, Sarah felt a wave of nausea stronger than usual. She quickly stood up, bringing her hand to her mouth. "Excuse me, Where's the restroom?" Michael pointed in the direction, concerned. A few minutes later, Sarah returned even paler, trying to compose herself. "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" Michael asked, offering water. Sarah looked at him and made an impulsive decision. She was tired of carrying secrets alone, tired of pretending everything was fine when her life was falling apart. "Mr. Thompson, I'm pregnant, 3 months along, and very scared about the future," she said, the words spilling out in a nervous rush. Michael was silent for a moment, processing the information. Then he understood her hesitation about accepting the job, the nausea, the fragility he had noticed in recent weeks. "Is the father going to help?" he asked carefully. Sarah laughed bitterly. "Ethan disappeared when I told him, just like Gabriel's father did 8 years ago. It seems I have a talent for choosing men." Michael felt a surprising anger toward men he didn't know. He remembered his own childhood when his father died and left his mother struggling alone to keep the family business running. "Sarah, This doesn't change anything about the job offer. In fact, it makes it even more important. You're going to need financial stability, and we're going to need your talent. It's a situation where everyone wins. But I'll be on leave when the baby is born. I'll have less availability. Sarah began to list the complications. And we will adapt to that. Sarah, talent like yours doesn't come around every day. It would be foolish of me to let prejudices or practical complications interfere with a good business, Michael interrupted firmly. Sarah felt tears in her eyes, not of sadness, but of a relief she hadn't felt in months. For the first time since discovering her pregnancy, someone looked at her as a solution, not a problem. Mr. Thompson, if you really want to hire me, I need a few conditions. I want flexible hours to take care of Gabriel. I want a clear contract about my duties, and I want to be evaluated on my work, not my personal history, Sarah said, finding a courage she didn't know she had. Michael smiled, the first time Sarah saw him truly smile. Perfect. I'll have my legal department prepare a contract with those specifications. When can you start? I need to give 2 weeks' notice at my current jobs. Would it be possible to start in 15 days? Sarah calculated mentally. Ideal. And Sarah, thank you for trusting me about the pregnancy. I know it wasn't easy, Michael said sincerely. When Sarah left the office that night, she felt different. Not just because of the professional opportunity, but because someone had looked at her and seen potential instead of problems. For the first time in weeks, she thought about the future with hope instead of terror. The next day, at school, Emma ran up to Gabriel during recess. Gabriel, my dad said your mum is going to work with him. They're going to build houses together. Gabriel looked confused. What do you mean, Emma? My mum works in cleaning. I don't know the details, but my dad was really excited last night. He said your mum is very smart and has amazing ideas, Emma told him enthusiastically. During lunch at home, Gabriel confronted his mother. Mum, Emma said you're going to work with her dad. Is it true? Sarah sat next to her son at the small kitchen table. Gabriel, it might be true. Mr. Thompson liked my designs and offered me a job at his company. Doing what? Gabriel asked, his eyes shining with curiosity. Helping to design houses for people like us. People who need beautiful and well-made homes, but that don't cost a lot, Sarah explained. Gabriel was silent for a few moments, then hugged his mother tightly. Mom, I always knew your designs were special. Now other people will know too. Sarah felt her heart tighten. Gabriel still didn't know about the baby, about all the changes that were coming, but at that moment she decided she would tell him soon. If she was going to start a new phase of life, she wanted her son to be her partner in this journey, not a child shielded from a reality he was mature enough to understand. That afternoon, while waiting for Gabriel outside school, Sarah ran into Miss Anderson in the courtyard. Sarah, how's the community garden project going? Michael told me you had a productive conversation, the principal commented with a knowing smile. Very productive, Miss Anderson. In fact, I think my life is about to change quite a bit, Sarah replied, unconsciously touching her. Belly. Miss Anderson noticed the gesture and Sarah's expression. If you need to talk about anything, Sarah, my door is always open. Sometimes women need support from other women. Sarah looked into the wise eyes of the principal and knew she had found another ally. Thank you, Miss Anderson. I think I will need it. Sarah's first day at Thompson & Sons arrived on a sunny June morning when the New York winter was still gentle and the city's trees held their golden leaves. She had spent the previous night sleepless, mentally reviewing everything she knew about architecture and civil engineering. Fearing she wouldn't meet expectations, Gabriel helped her choose her outfit, a black dress shirt they had bought at a thrift store in Brooklyn, and the dress pants that Sarah was already feeling tight around the waist due to her 4-month pregnancy. She looked at herself in the small bathroom mirror and took a deep breath, touching her belly that was starting to show. "Mom, you look beautiful. Everything will be fine," Ethan said, adjusting his imaginary tie with a loving gesture he learned from watching movies on TV. "Thank you, my love. You will be my lucky charm today," Sarah replied, kissing her son's forehead. They hadn't talked about the pregnancy yet. Sarah wanted to feel more secure professionally before sharing with Ethan the changes that were about to come. The headquarters of Thompson & Sons occupied 3 floors of a modern building in the Faria Lima area. Sarah knew the building well from the outside, but she had never imagined entering it as an employee. The marble lobby, mirrored elevators, and modern decor intimidated her, but she kept her chin up and shoulders straight, a posture her grandmother had taught her decades ago. Sarah Johnson, an elegant woman in her mid-30s, approached at the reception. "I'm Carla Vasconcelos, the Human Resources Manager. Michael asked me to welcome you and conduct your orientation." Carla had straight blonde hair, impeccable clothing, and smiled with a warm professionalism that didn't completely hide her barely concealed curiosity. It was evident that Sarah's hiring had generated internal comments. It was not common for Michael to hire consultants without traditional higher education. "Nice to meet you, Carla. Thank you for the warm welcome," Sarah replied, maintaining the professional tone she had rehearsed. During the tour of the facilities, Sarah observed everything with the attention of a self-taught architect. The office was well designed, maximizing natural light, integrated spaces that facilitated communication, and even a break area with plants that she recognized as suitable species for indoor environments. "This is where you will work," Carla pointed to a desk near the window in the projects department. "Michael wanted you to be close to the architecture team to facilitate integration. I hope you feel comfortable." Sarah looked around and saw 5 architects, 4 men and 1 woman, working at drafting tables and computers. They discreetly glanced in her direction, clearly curious about the new colleague who didn't fit the usual profile of the company. "Sarah, come meet the team." Michael appeared, wearing a light blue dress shirt that highlighted his eyes and showing a genuine smile. "Everyone, this is Sarah Johnson, our new social housing consultant. She will bring important perspectives to our projects." "Sarah, nice to meet you. I'm Robert Smith, the team coordinator." A man in his mid-40s introduced himself. He had a well-groomed beard and an intelligent gaze, but Sarah detected a hint of condescension in his voice. "Michael told us you have interesting practical experience." "The pleasure is mine, Robert. I'm eager to contribute and learn," Sarah replied diplomatically. Sarah, a woman with curly hair and a warm smile, approached. "I'm Lisa Brown, a sustainability specialist. Michael showed us some of your designs yesterday. I loved your concern for natural ventilation and light utilization." Sarah immediately felt connected to Lisa. There was sincerity in her voice and a genuine interest in her ideas, not just curiosity about her personal story. Michael led Sarah to her desk and explained the first project. "We are going to develop a housing complex in East Side City, 500 units, for families with incomes up to 3 minimum wages. I want you to analyze the basic project and suggest improvements that make the houses more functional for the families who will live there." Sarah examined the architectural plans spread out on the desk. The project was technically correct but generic: apartments of 450 square feet with 2 bedrooms, a living room, kitchen and bathroom, a standard layout she had seen dozens of times in housing programs. "Can I ask a few questions?" Sarah said, pulling out a small notebook from her bag. "Did you research the profile of the families who will live here? Number of children, if there are elderly people, if anyone works from home?" Robert frowned. "The project follows the standards of the Federal Housing Authority. It's what works for affordable housing." Sarah chose her words carefully. I understand there are standards to follow, but within those standards, perhaps we can make adjustments that improve the quality of life. For example, this integrated living room with the kitchen, she pointed to the plan, would be more functional if it had a half-height separation. It allows the cook to converse with the family, but prevents cooking odors from permeating the living room. Lisa approached, intrigued. That makes sense. Another issue is the solar orientation of these units. Some will receive direct sunlight in the bedroom windows during the afternoon. It will be unbearable in the summer. Sarah nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. And what if we create small overhangs above the windows? It protects from the strong sun but doesn't block light. It's a simple detail that makes a huge difference in thermal comfort. Michael watched the interaction with growing satisfaction. Sarah was not only identifying real problems, but proposing practical and economically viable solutions. Sarah, can you prepare a report with suggestions for improvements? Include technical justifications and cost impacts, Michael requested. During lunch, Lisa invited Sarah to eat in the small company cafeteria. It was a relaxed environment where employees could heat food brought from home or order delivery. Sarah, can I ask how you developed these technical skills? Lisa inquired while they ate salad and sandwiches. Sarah decided to be honest. Out of necessity, mainly. I grew up in a poorly designed house and always felt uncomfortable about it. I started researching why some environments work well and others don't. One thing led to another. So, you are self-taught? Yes, informal courses, a lot of reading and mainly observation. I spent years analyzing buildings, houses, asking masons and engineers whenever I had the chance, Sarah explained. Lisa smiled with admiration. That's more valuable than many diplomas out there. You learned because you wanted to solve real problems. In the afternoon, Sarah worked diligently on the analysis of the housing project. She sketched improvements, calculated cost impacts, and researched technical standards in the company library. Around 4 p.m. Sarah felt dizzy and needed to take a break. Are you okay, Sarah? Michael appeared, noticing that she looked pale. Just a little lightheadedness. It must be the nerves of the first day, Sarah lied, knowing that it was actually the pregnancy nausea that persisted even into the second trimester. Michael brought her water and crackers. Sarah, I want you to feel free to take breaks when you need to. Productivity isn't measured by hours spent sitting in a chair. At that moment, Sarah noticed something different in the way Michael treated her. It wasn't condescension or charity. It was genuine professional respect. He saw her as a solution to real problems for the company, not as a social project. By the end of the day, Sarah had produced an 8-page report with 12 suggestions for improvements for the housing project. Each suggestion included a technical justification, impact on user comfort, and an estimate of additional costs. Sarah, this is extraordinary, Mr. Johnson commented while reviewing her work. His initial condescension had given way to professional admiration. Some of these ideas are simple, but we had never thought of them. Michael read the report with growing attention. Sarah had identified issues that architects with decades of experience had overlooked, from the placement of electrical outlets to the size of built-in cabinets. Sarah, can you present these suggestions to our full team tomorrow, including directors and managers? Michael proposed. Sarah felt a flutter in her stomach. Presenting to an audience of executives was very different from chatting informally with colleagues. Mr. Thompson, I've never done a formal presentation. I don't know if you can do it. You just need to talk about the improvements like you did with me just now. I'll ask Carla to help you with the technical part of the presentation, but the content is yours, Michael encouraged. That afternoon, on her way to pick up Ethan from school, Sarah felt torn between euphoria and panic. Her first day at work had been better than she expected, but now she faced challenges that scared her. "Mom, how was your first day?" Ethan asked as soon as he saw her. "Complicated, but good, my love. The people were kind and seemed interested in my ideas," Sarah replied, hugging her son. "I knew it would work out, and Emma said her dad was really excited last night. He told her that you have ideas that can help many families," Ethan said proudly. That night, while Ethan did his homework, Sarah prepared her presentation at the kitchen table. She used sheets of plain paper and colored pens to create simple graphics that explained her suggestions. She didn't have PowerPoint or sophisticated resources, but she had clarity about each point she wanted to make. Around 10 p.m., when Ethan was already asleep, Sarah sat on the bed and finally allowed herself to process the day. For the first time in years, she had spent 8 hours using her intelligence to solve problems, being respected for her ideas, building something that could improve the lives of hundreds of families. She gently touched her slightly pronounced belly and whispered to the growing baby, "Your brother and I are building a better future for you, little one. Everything will be all right." The next morning, Michael arrived early at the office to review Sarah's report before the presentation. He reread each suggestion, checked technical and financial feasibility, and prepared for possible questions from the board. At 9 a.m., Sarah entered the conference room, carrying her sheets of paper and her heart racing. 12 executives from the company were present, including 2 directors she had never seen before. "Good morning, everyone," Michael began the meeting. "Today we will hear from Sarah Johnson, our new consultant, who will present suggestions for the East Side City project. Sarah, the floor is yours." Sarah took a deep breath, stood up, and looked at the people around the table. For a moment, she felt like a pregnant maid trying to convince wealthy businessmen. Then, she remembered the families who would live in those homes, the problems she had faced in poorly designed houses, and found her voice. "Good morning. My name is Sarah, and I will talk about how to make our affordable homes more functional for those who will actually live in them." The conference room at Johnson & Sons fell into absolute silence when Sarah finished her presentation. For 15 minutes, she had explained each improvement suggestion with the passion of someone who intimately understood the problems she was trying to solve. Her hands trembled slightly at the end, but her voice remained steady throughout the presentation. "Sarah," Mr. Johnson broke the silence, "are these suggestions based on your personal experience?" Sarah felt the weight of the question. She knew that her answer would define how she would be perceived in the company, as a social curiosity or as a competent professional. "Mr. Johnson, they are based on real needs I've observed throughout my life, but each suggestion has a solid technical foundation. For example, the issue of eaves isn't just about thermal comfort. It can reduce families' electricity costs by up to 20%. "And what about the impact on construction costs?" asked Dr. Smith, the financial director. Michael prepared to respond, but Sarah spoke up. "Dr. Smith, I calculated that all the improvements together increase the cost by approximately $850 per unit. It seems like a lot, but considering that we're talking about homes where families will live for decades, it's an investment that pays off in energy savings and comfort." Roberto, who had become an advocate for Sarah's ideas after the previous day, added, "Mr. Johnson, technically all the suggestions are feasible. In fact, some are so simple that I'm embarrassed I didn't think of them before." Mr. Johnson flipped through the report that Sarah had prepared by hand, with neat handwriting and precise technical drawings. "Sarah, have you ever considered going to architecture school?" The question caught Sarah by surprise. "Mr. Johnson, I have been working to support my son for 8 years. I've never had the means to stop and study. What if we created conditions for you? Our company has partnerships with universities. We can discuss scholarships, flexible hours, Mr. Johnson suggested, looking at Michael. Sarah felt her heart race, the possibility of studying architecture. It was a dream that she had buried so long ago that it hurt to unearth it. It would be amazing. But my personal situation is going to get more complicated in the coming months. Michael realized that Sarah was discreetly referring to her pregnancy. Mr. Johnson, how about we first implement Sarah's suggestions in the current project? We can test the effectiveness of the ideas and then discuss training possibilities. Perfect. Sarah, your suggestions are approved. I want you personally overseeing the implementation, Mr. Johnson announced, causing a murmur of approval in the room. After the meeting, Sarah left the conference room feeling as if she were floating. Lisa was waiting for her in the hallway with a radiant smile. Sarah, everyone is talking about your presentation. It was sensational. Lisa hugged her enthusiastically. I can't believe it worked, Sarah murmured, still processing what had happened. Michael approached, visibly pleased. Sarah, you not only impressed the board, you showed that we have much to learn about designing for real people. Congratulations. During lunch, Sarah called Ethan at school during recess. My love, Mommy has some good news to share when you get home. Is it about the new job, Mom? Did everything go well? Ethan asked eagerly. It went better than well, my angel. Your prayers worked, Sarah replied, feeling tears of joy in her eyes. In the afternoon, Sarah worked on detailing the approved improvements. Each suggestion needed to be transformed into technical specifications that the engineering team could implement. It was meticulous work that required precision, but Sarah felt energized by the responsibility. Around 3 p.m., her nausea returned with a vengeance. Sarah tried to hide it, but Lisa noticed her paleness. Sarah, are you okay? Do you want me to call a doctor? Lisa asked, concerned. Sarah hesitated, then decided to trust her. Lisa, can I share something in confidence? I'm 4 months pregnant. The nausea still lingers sometimes. Lisa was surprised, but soon smiled with understanding. Sarah, what wonderful news, and it explains why you hesitated about college. Have you told Michael? He knows. It was one of the reasons I accepted this job. I needed stability, Sarah explained. You're going to need support in the coming months. Pregnancy is beautiful, but it's tiring too. You can count on me for anything you need, Lisa offered sincerely. That night, Sarah arrived home carrying a folder with company documents and a smile she couldn't hide. Ethan was waiting for her at the apartment door, eager for news. So, Mum, how was the presentation? Sarah sat down with Ethan on the small sofa in the living room and detailed her day. The boy listened, with growing attention, asking intelligent questions about the projects and showing evident pride. Mum, does this mean your houses are really going to be built? That families are going to live in them? Ethan asked. It means exactly that, my love. 500 families are going to have better homes because of the ideas we developed, Sarah replied, still hardly believing the reality. Ethan hugged his mother tightly. Mom, you are the smartest person I know. I always knew that one day everyone would discover this. At that moment, Sarah decided it was time to share the other big news with Ethan. My love, I have one more important thing to tell you. You're going to have a little brother or sister. Ethan pulled away from the hug, processing the information. What do you mean, Mom? Are you pregnant? Yes, my angel. The baby is due at the end of the year. How do you feel about that? Sarah asked, watching her son's reaction closely. Ethan was thoughtful for a few moments. Mom, is the baby's dad going to stay with us? Sarah took a deep breath. No, Ethan. It's just going to be us three, just like it has. Always been, just the two of us. That's okay. We're a good family even if we're small. And now you have a good job so we can take care of the baby," Ethan said with the surprising maturity he always showed. "You're not mad or worried?" Sarah asked. "A little worried. Babies are a lot of work, but I'm also excited. It'll be fun to teach him things just like you teach me," Ethan replied, smiling. Sarah felt a wave of immense love for her son. At 8 years old, Ethan showed more maturity and generosity than many adults she knew. That week, the news of Sarah's approved suggestions spread throughout the company. Employees who had previously regarded her with curiosity now greeted her with genuine respect. Senior architects were asking for her opinion on other projects. Sarah was building a solid reputation based on competence, not sympathy. On Friday, Michael called her into his office. "Sarah, I want to propose something. There's a social housing conference in Washington, D.C. next week. I would like you to present our ideas there." Sarah felt a flutter in her stomach. Mr. Michael presenting to company executives was already difficult. A national conference. "Sarah, your ideas deserve to be known. They could influence housing policies across the country. It's an opportunity to multiply the impact of your work," Michael argued. Sarah thought about the hundreds of thousands of families living in poorly designed homes across the country. If her ideas could help beyond the Johnson & Sons project. "I accept, but I'm going to need help preparing a proper presentation," Sarah agreed, feeling both fear and excitement in equal measure. "Of course, Carla will help you with the technical part, and Sarah, I'll be there to support you. You won't face this alone," Michael assured. That afternoon at school, Ethan told Emma about his mum's pregnancy and her professional success. Emma listened attentively and then ran to tell her dad when he picked her up. "Dad, Sarah is having a baby, and she's going to present her ideas in Washington, D.C. Gabriel said she's very nervous, but also very happy," Emma reported excitedly. Michael smiled, proud of the employee who had become so much more than that, a person he genuinely admired. "That's great, Princess. Sarah deserves all these good things." "Dad, do you like Sarah?" Emma asked with curiosity. Michael hesitated. He had started to feel something for Sarah that went beyond professional respect, but he couldn't quite define what it was. "I have a lot of respect for Sarah, Emma. She's a special person. I think you guys should be real friends, not just work colleagues. She's nice, and Ethan is my best friend," Emma innocently suggested. Michael laughed at the simplicity of child logic. "Maybe you're right, Princess." On Sunday, Sarah spent the day preparing her presentation for Washington, D.C., with Ethan helping to organize materials and giving suggestions. For the first time in years, Sarah felt that her life was heading in the right direction, work that fulfilled her, recognition for her talents, and a family that was growing with love and hope. She still didn't know that the presentation in Washington, D.C. would not only change her career, but would open doors that would transform her life in ways she couldn't even imagine. The plane that would take Sarah and Michael to Washington, D.C. took off on a sunny July morning when the New York winter was finally showing its harsher side. Sarah had never flown before. At 28, her only trips had been by bus to visit relatives in the countryside. She gripped the arms of her seat during takeoff, trying to control the nervousness that she wasn't sure was coming from the flight or the presentation she would be giving in a few hours. "First time flying?" Michael asked gently, noticing her tension. "Yes. I've always wondered what it would be like to see New York from above," Sarah replied, looking out the window as the city transformed into a mosaic of buildings and avenues. "It's impressive how organized it looks from up here, right? On the ground, you only see the chaos." Michael observed Sarah's profile against the window and noticed something that touched him deeply. Even nervous about enormous personal and professional challenges, she could still marvel at the simple beauty of an aerial view. There was a purity in her capacity for admiration that he had lost years ago. "Sarah, can I ask you a personal question? How are you feeling about all of this? The new job, the pregnancy, the changes?" Michael asked carefully. Sarah unconsciously touched her belly, now clearly visible under the navy blue dress she had bought specifically for the trip. "Scared, Mr. Johnson, but also hopeful for the first time in a long time. You know that feeling that maybe life isn't just about surviving?" Michael nodded, thinking about his own life, which had become a succession of meetings, contracts, and empty responsibilities. "I understand. And Ethan? How did he react to the baby?" Sarah genuinely smiled for the first time on the flight. "Better than I imagined. Yesterday he started talking to my belly before bed, telling it about his day at school. He said he wants to teach soccer to the little brother. He doesn't know if it's a boy or a girl yet. He didn't want to know. Ethan said surprises are more fun," Sarah laughed. "Sometimes I think my child is more mature than I am." The conference was taking place at the Washington, D.C. Convention Center, an imposing building that intimidated Sarah when they arrived. Hundreds of architects, urban planners, government representatives, and business people circulated the halls discussing housing policies, construction technologies, and social projects. "Sarah, you're going to present in the Innovations in Affordable Housing session at 2 p.m., Michael explained as they walked through the lobby. "Before that, we'll watch some presentations to help you get familiar with the environment." During the morning, Sarah attentively watched the presentations of other professionals. Impressive projects were presented with sophisticated slides, complex graphs, and technical jargon that she sometimes didn't fully understand. She began to feel small in the face of the academic specialization of the other speakers. "Mr. Johnson, I don't know if I'm ready for this. These people have PhDs, years of experience, international companies," Sarah whispered during a break. "Sarah, they have degrees. You have something rarer, real experience with the problems we're trying to solve. Half of these people have never set foot in an affordable housing unit, never talked to a family living on 2 minimum wages," Michael replied firmly. At 1:30 p.m., Sarah was backstage in the main auditorium, peering through the curtain at an audience of nearly 300 people. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the notes she had prepared. Not sophisticated slides, just cards with key points handwritten. "Sarah Johnson, consultant for Johnson & Sons, will present Affordable Housing, Perspectives from Those Who Actually Live There," the moderator announced. Sarah walked to the podium with shaky legs, but maintaining the upright posture her grandmother had taught her. She looked at the audience, hundreds of expectant faces, some clearly skeptical about what a woman without formal academic training could contribute to that environment. "Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Johnson. I am not a trained architect. I don't have a postgraduate degree. And until 6 months ago, I worked as a night cleaner," she began, causing a surprised murmur in the audience. "But I have lived my whole life in affordable housing. I know what it's like to try to raise a child in a poorly ventilated 375-square-foot apartment. I know what it's like to have to choose between paying the electricity bill or buying medicine because the house wasn't designed with family budgeting in mind." The auditorium fell into absolute silence. Sarah had captured attention in a way that no speaker had managed to do all day. "I will talk about 12 simple improvements that can transform a housing project from a shelter into a home without significantly increasing costs," Sarah continued, finding her voice and confidence. For 25 minutes, Sarah spoke without consulting her notes. She explained each suggestion with practical examples, told real stories of families she knew, demonstrated how small architectural changes could have enormous impacts on quality of life. She talked about the importance of covered clotheslines in areas where it rains a lot, about the need for outlets at the right height for families with small children, about how the positioning of a window can mean the difference between a child being able to study or not. When she finished, the auditorium erupted in applause, not just polite academic applause, but a genuine ovation that lasted over a minute. "Questions?" the moderator offered. Several hands immediately shot up. "Ms. Johnson," a renowned architect from Seattle, stood up. "Your suggestions challenge practically every standard we use in social housing. How can we implement these changes on a large scale?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Sir, I am not a doctor, and I am not questioning anyone's technical competence. I am simply reminding you that houses are made for people to live in, not to win architecture awards. Regarding large-scale implementation, let's start project by project, talking to the families who will live in these houses." Sorry, Sarah," a representative from the Department of Urban Development stood up. "The federal government is interested in better understanding these proposals. Would it be possible for you to develop a technical manual?" Sarah looked at Michael in the audience. He nodded encouragingly. "It would be an honor to help, but I would like to do this in partnership with trained architects. My ideas need your technical knowledge to become a reality," Sarah replied diplomatically. After the presentation, Sarah was surrounded by professionals wanting to exchange business cards, form partnerships, and learn more about her proposals. Michael watched from afar, proud and impressed by how naturally she handled the attention. "Sarah, congratulations. Your presentation was the best of the day." Mr. Johnson, Director of Social Housing at the Federal Housing Authority, approached her. "I would like to invite you to participate in a committee we are forming to review national standards for affordable housing." Sarah looked to Michael, seeking guidance. Joining a federal committee was an incredible opportunity, but it also came with responsibilities that scared her. "Mr. Johnson, I accept the invitation, but I want to make it clear that my contribution will always be based on the perspective of the end user, not on academic theories," Sarah responded. "Perfect. That's exactly the perspective we need," Mr. Johnson confirmed. On the flight back to New York, Sarah felt more relaxed. The adrenaline from the presentation had faded, leaving a deep satisfaction with the day. "Michael, can I ask you something?" Sarah said, using his first name for the first time. "Of course." "Why did you bet on me? I mean, you could have hired any experienced architect. Why a pregnant cleaning lady without a degree?" Michael carefully considered his answer. "Sarah, in 15 years running the company, I've seen hundreds of technically perfect projects fail because no one thought about who would actually live in those spaces. You think first about the people. That's not something you learn in school." Sarah was silent for a few moments, processing the response. "You know, a week ago, I was a pregnant cleaning lady worried about how I would support 2 children. Today I returned from Washington, D.C. after speaking to 300 people. Sometimes life changes very quickly. And how do you feel about that?" "Grateful, scared too, because I don't want to disappoint anyone. But mostly grateful," Sarah replied, touching her belly where the baby had started to move more actively. "Sarah, can I be direct? You've transformed not only your life, but also the way our company thinks about projects. And you've transformed the way I think about many things," Michael said, his voice carrying an emotion he didn't expect. Sarah looked at him with curiosity. "What do you mean?" Michael hesitated, then decided to be honest. "You reminded me that work can have meaning beyond profit, that intelligence comes in many forms, that courage is more important than comfort." That night, when they arrived in New York, Michael insisted on taking Sarah home. During the drive through the city, they talked about upcoming projects, the pregnancy, about Ethan and Emma. "Michael, can I tell you something?" Sarah said when they stopped in front of the simple building where she lived. Today was the first day of my life that I felt important. Not just needed or useful, but really important. Michael felt a tightness in his chest. Sarah, you've always been important. You just hadn't found the right place to show it. When Sarah went up to her apartment, she found Ethan waiting up, even though it was almost midnight. "Mom, how was it? Did everything go well?" Ethan asked, hugging her. Sarah told her son everything, the presentation, the applause, the invitation, to join the federal committee. Ethan listened with growing pride. "Mom, are you really going to help families all over the country?" Ethan asked. "Maybe yes, my love, but always remembering that our family comes first," Sarah assured him. That night, while Ethan slept and the baby moved gently in her belly, Sarah lay awake in bed thinking about the changes the last few months had brought. From cleaning lady to nationally recognized consultant, from invisible woman to respected voice in social housing issues. She didn't yet know that her presentation would be discussed in specialized newspapers the following week, that universities would start inviting her to speak, that her life was about to change even more dramatically. At that moment, she simply felt grateful to have found a way to transform her painful experiences into a tool to help others. August arrived in New York, bringing that typical dry cold of the city's winter, and with it significant changes in Sarah's routine. Her presentation in Washington, D.C. had resonated more than she imagined. Architects from all over the country began reaching out to Johnson & Sons, wanting to learn about her proposals. Universities sent invitations for lectures, and the Federal Committee on Social Housing had scheduled its first meeting for September. Sarah was in her 5th month of pregnancy, and her rounded belly could no longer be disguised by the loose dresses she had bought. At the company, everyone knew about the pregnancy and treated her with special care. Lisa always offered help, John adjusted meeting times to avoid her moments of nausea, and Michael created an environment where she could work with total flexibility. "Sarah, you have a letter." Carla from reception handed her an elegant envelope. "From the New York Times." Sarah opened the envelope with growing curiosity. It was an invitation for an interview about affordable housing for the architecture and urbanism section. The newspaper had learned about her presentation in Washington, D.C. through... "Lisa, look at this." Sarah showed the letter to her colleague, who had become her closest confidant. "They want to do a feature on my proposals." "Sarah, that's amazing. Are you going to accept?" Lisa asked excitedly. "I don't know. Giving an interview for a newspaper is very different from presenting to architects. What if I say something silly?" Sarah expressed the insecurity that still haunted her in crucial moments. Ethan appeared at that moment, overhearing the end of the conversation. "Sarah, what are you two talking about?" Lisa showed the letter to him. Ethan read it quickly, a smile forming on his face. "Sarah, this is fantastic. The New York Times has a huge reach. Your ideas could reach politicians, other business people, people who make important decisions about housing," Ethan encouraged. "But Ethan, what if they ask me questions I can't answer? What if they find out that I don't actually understand that much about architecture?" Sarah voiced her deepest fears. Ethan stepped closer and looked directly into her eyes. "Sarah, you understand housing more than anyone I know, not because you studied theory, but because you lived the reality. That has infinitely more value." That afternoon, Sarah called the journalist and scheduled the interview for the following week. She spent the next few days reviewing her proposals, studying technical terms she might need to use, mentally preparing for tough questions. At school, Ethan and Emma remained inseparable. Their friendship had deepened even more since Emma learned about Sarah's pregnancy. The girl showed fascination with the idea of the baby and always asked how it was growing. "Uncle," "Ethan," Emma said during recess. "My dad has been acting differently lately. Happier, you know. I think it's because of the work with your mum." Ethan observed his friend with the keen perception he had developed early on. "Differently how?" "He smiles more, and he always wants to know how you guys are doing. Yesterday, he asked if your mom was taking good care of herself during the pregnancy," Emma innocently shared. Ethan became thoughtful. His mom had also been acting differently, not just because of the new job or the pregnancy, but there was something lighter about her. Demeanor, a joy he hadn't seen in years. The following Thursday, Sarah arrived at the offices of the New York Times wearing her best outfit, a light blue blouse that Lisa had lent her and a black skirt that still fit despite her belly. The journalist, Mr. Johnson, welcomed her into a small but cozy room. "Sarah, thank you for agreeing to the interview. Your work has been gaining a lot of attention in the field of social architecture," Mr. Johnson began, turning on the recorder. "Thank you for your interest, Mr. Johnson. I hope I can contribute in some way," Sarah replied, trying to control her nerves. "Let's start from the beginning. How does a cleaner develop enough knowledge to question established patterns of affordable housing?" Sarah took a deep breath and decided to be completely honest. "Mr. Johnson, I don't question patterns out of arrogance or pretension. I question because I've lived in poorly designed houses and know firsthand how that affects a family. When you have to choose between turning on the fan or paying the electricity bill because your house is an oven in the summer, you start to understand that something is wrong with the design. Can you give specific examples?" "Of course. I lived in a house where the laundry area was next to my son's bedroom. All the steam from the washing machine created humidity that left his clothes always smelling musty. It's a simple design flaw, but it directly affects the child's health," Sarah explained with growing ease. For an hour, Sarah shared real stories, explained her technical proposals, and spoke about the importance of including residents in the process of creating housing projects. Mr. Johnson was impressed with the clarity and depth of her answers. "Sarah, a more personal question. You're pregnant, working at a high-level company, and have been invited to federal committees. How do you balance all of this?" Sarah instinctively touched her belly. "I don't balance it perfectly, Mr. Johnson. Some days are harder than others. But I have an incredible support network, my son Ethan, who is my biggest motivator, colleagues who have become family, and a boss who believes in people beyond their diplomas." "That boss would be Ethan Thompson." "Yes. Ethan changed my life by giving me the opportunity to show what I'm capable of, but more than that, he taught me that a competence can come from unexpected places," Sarah replied, her voice carrying genuine gratitude. The interview was published in the Sunday edition, taking up an entire page with a photo of Sarah at the construction site of the East Side City project, where her proposals were being implemented. The headline read, "The People's Architect, How a Cleaner is Revolutionizing Affordable Housing in America." The following Monday, the phone at Johnson & Sons didn't stop ringing. Journalists wanting more interviews, architects interested in partnerships, even politicians wanting to learn about Sarah's proposals. "Sarah, you've become a celebrity," Lisa joked, but there was real concern in her voice. "How are you feeling about all this attention?" "Scared," Sarah admitted. "I don't want this to turn into a circus. What's important are the families that will benefit from better projects." Ethan appeared with a stack of messages. "Sarah, we've received invitations from 5 universities for lectures, 3 companies wanting consulting, and the governor's office wants to schedule a meeting." Sarah sat heavily in the chair, feeling the weight of responsibility. "Ethan, I don't know if I'm ready for all of this. I'm afraid of disappointing expectations." Ethan pulled up a chair and sat next to her. "Sarah, remember when you were scared to present to our board, and then to the conference in Washington, D.C.? You always adapt, you always find your voice. It's different. Now people have high expectations. What if I make a public mistake? What if they find out I'm not that competent? Sarah voiced her fears. Sarah, Ethan gently took her hand. Do you think someone competent would have done everything you've done? The results speak for themselves. Families from the East Side City project are already reporting greater satisfaction with their homes. This is not luck or coincidence. That night, Sarah arrived home emotionally exhausted. Ethan was waiting for her with a serious expression on his face. Mum, I need to tell you something. Today, some parents from school were talking about you at the gate. I overheard, Ethan said hesitantly. Sarah felt her heart race. What were they saying, my love? Some good things. That you are an example of overcoming challenges, that you show anyone can succeed. But also, Ethan hesitated. Go on, Ethan. I'd rather know. Some said you must be full of yourself now, that you've forgotten where you came from. And a woman said it wasn't appropriate for a single pregnant woman to be a role model for the kids, Ethan shared, clearly upset. Sarah felt a mix of anger and sadness. Even with all her professional success, there were still people judging her for personal choices that were nobody's business. Ethan, what do you think about those conversations? I think it's unfair, Mom. You work harder than anyone I know. And about being pregnant and single, well, I think our family is good just the way it is, Ethan said with the simple wisdom he always showed. Sarah hugged her son tightly. My love, there will always be people who criticize. What matters is that we know who we are and keep doing what's right. The following week, Michael sought Sarah for a private conversation. They met in his office after hours when the company was empty. Sarah, I want to discuss something important with you. All these opportunities that are arising, speaking engagements, consulting, participation in committees, I think you should consider starting your own company, Michael suggested. Sarah was surprised. What do you mean? Leave Johnson & Sons? Not necessarily leave, but have your own social housing consulting firm. You could partner with us and other construction companies. You would have more autonomy and freedom to accept projects you truly believe in, Michael explained. Michael, I don't understand anything about starting a business, and I don't have money for initial investment, Sarah protested. I can help with the bureaucratic part, and about investment. Sarah, you have something more valuable than money. You have unique knowledge and a growing reputation. Any bank would finance your projects, Michael argued. Sarah was silent for a few moments, processing the suggestion. The idea of professional autonomy was tempting, but also frightening. Can you think about it? It's a huge decision, especially with the baby coming, Sarah asked. Of course. But Sarah, I want you to know that regardless of your decision, you will always have my support. Professionally and... Michael hesitated. Personally as well. Sarah looked into his eyes, noticing something different in the way he looked at her. There was affection there that went beyond the professional relationship, but she wasn't sure how to interpret or react to it. Michael, thank you for everything, not just for the work, but for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself, Sarah said, sincerely. Sarah, can I be honest about something? Michael asked, his voice lower. Of course. You haven't just transformed our company. You've transformed me too. For months I hadn't thought about life beyond work. You reminded me that there are important things beyond profits and contracts, Michael confessed. Sarah felt a wave of complex emotion. She had wondered if the special care Michael showed was just professional or if there was something personal involved. Now she knew the answer, but she wasn't sure how to deal with that information. Michael, you're a special person too. But my life is very complicated right now. The pregnancy, the professional changes. Ethan, I don't know if I have emotional space for other things, Sarah replied gently. Michael nodded, respecting her position. I completely understand. I just wanted you to know that when you're ready for those other things, if you ever are, I will be here. That night, Sarah lay in bed thinking about Michael's words. She felt confused. There was genuine affection for him, admiration, gratitude, but there was also fear of complicating the professional situation she had fought so hard to build. And there was the practical reality. She was a pregnant woman with another man's child, raising a son alone, trying to build a career from scratch. The baby kicked strongly in her belly, as if to remind her that there were more immediate decisions to make. Sarah smiled, caressing her belly. Easy there, little one. We'll figure one thing at a time, she murmured to the baby growing inside her, feeling that her life was about to get even more interesting and complicated. September arrived with the promise of spring in New York, and Sarah was entering her 6th month of pregnancy. Her belly had grown, significantly, making some activities more challenging, but paradoxically, she had never felt more energized professionally. The impact of the interview in the New York Times had opened doors she had never imagined possible. That Monday morning, Sarah arrived at the office carrying a bulky folder with partnership proposals she had received over the weekend. Michael was waiting for her with a cup of chamomile tea. He had learned that coffee aggravated her nausea. "Good morning, Sarah. How was your weekend? Is Ethan doing well?" Michael asked, noticing that she seemed more tired than usual. "Good morning, Michael. Ethan is great, thanks for asking. The weekend was intense," Sarah replied, settling into the chair and gratefully accepting the tea. "I received 7 different consulting proposals. A federal university wants me to develop a course on applied social architecture, and there's something I need to tell you." Michael leaned in, sensing the seriousness in her voice. "What happened?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Mark showed up at my building Saturday night. He heard about the interview in the newspaper and, well, now that I'm famous, suddenly he wants to be part of the baby's life." Michael felt an immediate and protective anger that surprised him. "And what did you say to him?" "That it was too late, that I don't want anything from him, and he has no rights over my child after disappearing when he found out about the pregnancy," Sarah replied firmly, but Michael noticed her hands trembling slightly. "But he said he would look for a lawyer, that he has rights as a father." "Sarah, you have all the legal support you need. I know excellent lawyers who can help you protect your interests and those of the baby," Michael immediately offered. "Thank you, Michael. I don't know what I would do without your friendship," Sarah said, briefly touching his hand, a gesture that sent an electric jolt through Michael's arm. At that moment, Lisa knocked on the office door. "Sarah, sorry to interrupt, but there's an urgent call. It's from the Department of Housing. They want to discuss a national project." Sarah answered the call at Michael's desk, who discreetly pretended to review documents while trying not to listen to every word. It was Dr. Carlos Mendoza, the director she had met in Washington, D.C. "Sarah, we have an extraordinary proposal for you. The federal government is launching an innovative housing program, 100,000 units in 5 years, incorporating concepts of sustainability and social functionality. We want you as the lead consultant for the project," Dr. Carlos explained over the phone. Sarah was speechless for a few seconds. "Dr. Carlos, this is an immense responsibility. 100,000 families." "Exactly. And you are the right person to ensure that these homes meet the real needs of these families. Obviously, there would be a complete technical team working with you. Your role would be to oversee the projects from the end user's perspective." After the call, Sarah sat in silence, processing the magnitude of the opportunity. Michael patiently waited for her to organize her thoughts. "Michael, I don't know if I'm ready for something of this scale. 100,000 homes. If I make a mistake, it affects hundreds of thousands of people, Sarah verbalized her fear. Sarah, think differently. If you get it right, you improve the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, and you have a track record of getting it right, Michael encouraged. That afternoon, Sarah had a prenatal appointment with Dr. Smith, who had become not only her doctor but a true friend. During the ultrasound, they discovered that the baby was developing perfectly. "Sarah, do you want to know the baby's gender today?" Dr. Smith asked, adjusting the equipment. Sarah thought for a moment. "You know I do. I think it's time to find out." Dr. Smith smiled. "It's a girl, Sarah, a beautiful and healthy girl." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. A daughter. Ethan would have a little sister. Mentally, she began to imagine what it would be like to raise a girl, what values she would pass on to her, what kind of example she would be. "Doctor, can I ask a personal question? How was it for you to balance career and motherhood?" Sarah asked. "I'm not going to lie, Sarah. It's challenging. But it can also be the greatest source of strength you've ever had. My children motivate me to be a better professional, and my career allows me to be a better example for them," Dr. Smith answered honestly. That night, Sarah arrived home excited to share the news with Ethan. She found him at the kitchen table doing math homework, completely focused on equations that seemed complex for his age. "Mom, how was your day? Is the baby okay?" Ethan asked, immediately dropping his pencil. "The baby is great, my love. In fact, I found out today that it's going to be a girl. You're going to have a little sister," Sarah announced, watching closely for her son's reaction. Ethan was silent for a few seconds, processing the information. Then a huge smile spread across his face. "A sister? Mom, that's amazing. I can teach her so many things." And there's more news. "I received a very important job offer from the federal government. It would be a huge project that could help many families," Sarah continued. Ethan stood up and carefully hugged his mother, avoiding squeezing her belly. "Mom, you're becoming really important, aren't you? People are coming to you to solve big problems." "Yes, my love. Sometimes I even surprise myself with that," Sarah laughed. "But I want you to know that no matter how important my work is, you and your sister will always be my priority." "I know, Mom, and I'm proud of you. My friends at school always talk about how cool it is to have a famous mom," Ethan said with touching sincerity. The following week, Sarah made 2 important decisions. First, she accepted the federal consultancy, but with specific conditions: flexible hours due to her pregnancy, and the possibility of working partially from home after the baby was born. Second, she decided to start the process of opening her own consulting firm, following Michael's suggestion. "Sarah, what name do you want to give the company?" Carla from HR asked, helping with the paperwork. Sarah thought for a moment. "Habitare Consulting. Habitare is Latin for to dwell, but in the sense of creating a home, not just occupying a space." Michael, who was present during the conversation, smiled in approval. "Perfect. A name that has meaning and elegance." During this time, the relationship between Sarah and Michael had evolved into a deep and respectful friendship. He continued to show special care for her, always asking about her health and well-being, offering practical support but without romantic pressure. Sarah appreciated this balance. She felt respected and valued without feeling pressured. At school, Ethan and Emma celebrated together the news about the little sister who was on the way. Emma, now 8 years old, showed an early maternal affection for the baby who hadn't even been born yet. "Ethan, when your sister is born, can I help take care of her?" Emma asked during recess. "Of course, Emma. My mum always says that it takes an entire village to raise a child well," Ethan replied, repeating something Sarah used to say. Miss Anderson, observing the children's interaction, commented to one of the teachers, It's impressive how this friendship between Ethan and Emma has built bridges between completely different worlds. The families are naturally becoming closer. By the end of September, Sarah had her first official meeting as a federal consultant. The meeting took place in Washington, D.C., in an impressive room at the Department of Housing with representatives from construction companies across the country. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah began her presentation. In the next 5 years, we will build 100,000 homes. Each of these homes will shelter a family that dreams of dignity, security, and belonging. Our responsibility is not just to deliver square footage, but to provide homes where people can thrive. For 2 hours, Sarah presented detailed guidelines they had developed, from technical specifications to recommendations on integration with public services and the creation of community areas. At the end of the presentation, the National Housing Director commented, "Sarah, in 20 years of working with social housing, I have never seen anyone balance technical rigor with human sensitivity as you did today." On the flight back to New York, Sarah reflected on the journey of the past few months. From a pregnant, unemployed cleaner to a recognized national consultant, the transformation sometimes felt unreal. She touched her belly where her daughter was growing and murmured, "Little one, you will be born into a world where your mother has a voice and purpose. I will strive every day to be worthy of this and to create a better future for you and your brother." When she arrived home that night, she found Ethan waiting with a surprise. He had drawn a picture of the family, him, Sarah, and a tiny baby in the mother's arms. Below, he had written in his neat handwriting, "My family is small but perfect." Sarah kept the drawing in the album she was organizing for her daughter, documents and memories from the months leading up to her birth. She wanted her to know one day how much she had been awaited with love, and how her arrival represented not just family growth, but the pinnacle of a total transformation phase in their lives. Only 3 months remained until the baby's birth, and Sarah felt that all the dreams she had secretly nurtured for years were finally coming true, some in ways she had never imagined before. December arrived in New York with the characteristic warmth of summer, and Sarah was entering the final weeks of her pregnancy. At 8 months, she had managed to establish a balanced routine, working part-time at Habitat Consulting, which now operated in a small office that Michael had made available within Thompson and Sons, and dedicating her afternoons to preparing everything for the arrival of her daughter. Ethan, now 9 years old as of November, had become the most dedicated assistant Sarah could have. He organized the baby clothes, assembled the crib with a precision that even impressed Michael, and had created a mental timer to remind his mother to take her prenatal vitamins. "Mom, Dr. Smith said the baby could be born at any moment now. Are you sure you're okay to go to work today?" Ethan asked that Tuesday morning, December 15th, watching Sarah get ready with movements slower than usual. "I'm fine, my love, and today is an important day. We are presenting the final project for the East Side City housing development to the board. I want to be there to see the results of everything we've worked on," Sarah replied, adjusting the loose blouse that barely concealed her large belly. During the trip to the office, Sarah felt some mild contractions, but nothing that worried her. Dr. Smith had explained that sporadic contractions were normal at this stage of pregnancy. She was more focused on the presentation she would make in a few hours. At the company, everyone noticed that Sarah was especially radiant that morning. There was something different about her demeanor, a maternal serenity mixed with professional satisfaction that made her shine almost literally. "Sarah, are you feeling okay? You look different today," Lisa commented, bringing a cup of chamomile tea. "I'm feeling complete, Lisa. I know it may sound strange, but it's as if everything in my life is finally in the right place," Sarah replied, absent-mindedly stroking her belly. Michael arrived at 10 a.m. to review the final details of the presentation. He had worked for weeks to ensure that all the technical aspects of Sarah's suggestions were perfect in the final documentation. Sarah, the numbers are impressive. The families who have already moved into the first units reported 89% satisfaction with the improvements we've implemented. This is practically unprecedented in social housing, Michael reported, genuinely proud. Michael, are you sure the windows in the bedrooms are at the height I specified? It's important for air circulation, Sarah asked, reviewing technical details. Exactly as per your specifications. And Sarah? Michael hesitated. I want you to know that regardless of how your life changes with the arrival of the baby, you will always have a place here, as a consultant, as a partner, or as a friend. Sarah looked into his eyes and saw absolute sincerity. In recent months, Michael had become much more than a boss. He was a confidant, an unconditional support, someone who believed in her dreams, even when she doubted herself. Michael, you have changed my life in ways you can't even imagine, not just professionally, but you helped me believe that I deserved good things, Sarah said, her voice filled with emotion. At 2 p.m., the conference room was full for the final presentation of the East Side City Project. In addition to the board of Thompson & Sons, there were representatives from the City Hall, the Federal Housing Authority, and journalists specializing in architecture and social housing. Sarah stood up carefully, feeling a stronger contraction than the previous ones, but ignored the discomfort. She had waited months for that moment. Ladies and gentlemen, a year ago I was a cleaner who sketched houses in my spare time. Today, I have the privilege of presenting a project that proves that affordable housing can be synonymous with quality, dignity, and innovation, Sarah began, her voice clear and confident. For 40 minutes, she presented not only numbers and technical specifications, but real stories of the families who had moved into the housing development. She told about Ms. Smith, who could finally dry her clothes properly thanks to the area of... Marina concluded her presentation about little John, who now had a quiet corner to study because the bedrooms had been positioned away from the social area. The Johnson family saved 40% on their electricity bill due to the use of natural light. These results prove that when we design for real people, considering their everyday needs, we create more than just housing. We create homes, Marina concluded. The presentation was met with warm applause. Mr. Johnson stood up to comment. Marina, in 15 years of managing housing projects, I've never seen satisfaction rates this high. You haven't just revolutionized our way of thinking about projects. You've proven that profit and social responsibility can go hand in hand. At that moment, Marina felt a contraction much stronger than all the previous ones. She tried to hide it, but Michael, who was watching her closely, noticed immediately. Marina, are you okay? He whispered, moving closer. I think I'm not, Marina whispered back, feeling a wetness between her legs that made her realize her water had broken. Michael sprang into action with surprising efficiency. Everyone, we're going to wrap up the meeting here. Marina needs to go to the hospital now. The ensuing confusion was controlled but intense. Lisa rushed to grab the maternity bag that Marina had kept in the office since her 8th month. Michael called a taxi and contacted Ethan at school, explaining that his little sister had decided to be born that day. During the ride to the hospital, Marina held Michael's hand as she breathed through contractions that were now coming every 3 minutes. Michael, I'm scared, Marina admitted between contractions. Scared of what? He asked gently. Of not being good enough, of not being able to raise 2 children alone, of not being able to balance everything. Marina verbalized fears she had kept for months. Michael squeezed her hand firmly. Marina, you are the strongest person I know. You transformed your entire life in less than a year. Your children will have the most determined and loving mother they could ever have." At the hospital, Dr. Smith was waiting. "Marina, your daughter decided to arrive on the day of your big presentation. What dramatic timing!" The next 4 hours passed in a blur of contractions, controlled breathing, and much anticipation. Ethan arrived accompanied by Miss Anderson, who had offered to pick him up from school. Michael remained in the waiting room, more nervous than if he were the father of the child. At 7:47 p.m. on a sunny Tuesday in December, Sophia Johnson was born, weighing 7.05 pounds and measuring 19 inches, crying with strength and showing from the very first moment that she had inherited her mother's determined personality. "Marina, she's perfect," Dr. Smith said, placing the baby in Marina's arms, completely healthy and beautiful like her mother. Marina looked at her daughter's tiny, perfect face and felt a wave of love so intense that she could barely breathe. Sophia had dark hair and eyes that promised to be as big as Ethan's. "Hi, my princess. I'm your mommy. I've waited so long for you," Marina murmured, kissing her daughter's soft forehead. Ethan was the first visitor allowed in the room. He tiptoed in, his eyes wide with admiration and nervousness. "Mom, she's tiny and perfect," Ethan whispered, moving closer to the bed. "Do you want to meet your sister, Ethan?" Marina asked, positioning Sophia so he could see better. Ethan extended his pinky finger, which Sophia instinctively grabbed. The boy smiled with a pure joy that filled Marina's heart. "Hi, Sophia. I'm your brother Ethan. I'm going to teach you everything about the world. I'm going to protect you always, and I'm going to help you with your homework when you grow up." Ethan spoke to the baby with touching seriousness. Michael patiently waited for his turn to meet Sophia. When he finally entered the room, he carried a bouquet of flowers and an expression of tenderness that Marina had never seen before. "Marina, she's beautiful. She looks like you," Michael said, watching the baby peacefully sleeping in her mother's arms. "Michael, thank you for everything, for being here, for taking care of everything, for—" Marina began, but he gently interrupted her. "Marina, you don't need to thank me. It's what we do for the people we love," Michael said, the words coming out before he could filter them. Marina looked into his eyes and saw the truth that they had both avoided admitting for the past few months. There was love there, not just admiration or affection, but genuine and deep love. "Michael," Marina began, but was interrupted by Sophia, who woke up and started to cry softly. "I think she's hungry," Dr. Smith commented, entering the room. "Michael, how about letting mommy and baby settle in? You can talk later." That night, while Sophia slept in the nursery of the hospital and Ethan rested in the chair next to Marina's bed, she stayed awake processing the transformations of the past months. A year ago, she was a single cleaner struggling to support Ethan. Now, she was the mother of 2 children, the owner of a consulting firm, a federal consultant, and she had discovered a love she wasn't sure she was ready to accept. She looked out the hospital window at the city of New York, illuminated on a summer night, and made a silent promise to Sophia. "My daughter, you will grow up in a world where your mother has a voice, where your dreams are respected, where love comes in forms we don't always expect. I will teach you that women can be strong and vulnerable at the same time, that success is measured in lives touched, not just in money earned." The next morning, when Michael arrived at the hospital carrying coffee and pastries for Marina, he found mother and daughter gazing at each other with mutual fascination. "How was the first night?" Michael asked, approaching carefully. "Perfect. She slept well, fed well. She's a calm baby," Marina replied, radiating maternal happiness. "Marina, about what we talked about yesterday," Michael began, but she interrupted him. Michael, I love you too. It took me a while to understand, to accept, but it's true. You has become essential in my life and in Ethan's, Sarah confessed, her voice low but firm. Michael sat on the edge of the bed and gently took Sarah's free hand. Sarah, I want to be part of your lives, not as a boss or as a friend, but as family. And Mark, what if he really looks for a lawyer? Sarah asked, voicing a practical concern. We'll face it together. Whatever comes up, we face it together, Michael replied with determination. At that moment, Lily opened her dark eyes and looked directly at Michael, as if assessing the man who wanted to be part of her family. Michael smiled at the baby, who seemed to approve with a small, satisfied yawn. I think she likes you, Sarah laughed. I hope so. I plan to be around for a long time, Michael replied, gently kissing Sarah's forehead. Ethan arrived at that moment, carrying a school backpack and a bright smile. Mom, Ms. Anderson said I can skip school until Thursday to be with you guys, and Emma sent a drawing for Lily. Emma's drawing was adorable. A family of 4, Sarah, Ethan, Lily, and a tall male figure that suspiciously resembled Michael. Below it was written in the girl's neat handwriting, Welcome to the family, Lily. Sarah looked at the drawing, at Michael holding her hand, at Ethan organizing his sister's clothes, at Lily sleeping peacefully, and realized that her life had become more beautiful than any dream she had dared to dream. 3 days later, when they left the hospital, Lily in Sarah's arms, Ethan carrying the flowers that had arrived from classmates and friends, Michael carrying the bags, they looked like a family that had always existed. The last stop before heading home was at the school, where Sarah wanted to personally thank Ms. Anderson for all the support during the pregnancy. Sarah, Lily is beautiful, and you all look so happy, Ms. Anderson commented, holding the baby with the experience of someone who had raised 3 children. Ms. Anderson, I want you to know that none of this would have been possible without the support of the school. When Ethan received the scholarship, you had no idea you were changing an entire family's life, Sarah said, moved. Sarah, education has always been about transforming lives. You just proved that when we give real opportunities to talented and determined people, the results exceed any expectations. Ms. Anderson replied. That afternoon, when they arrived at the apartment in Southside, which would soon be exchanged for a larger house that Sarah could now afford, Ethan helped set up Lily in the crib he had assembled himself. Mom, our family is the perfect size now, Ethan commented, watching his sister sleep. Michael, who was arranging the flowers in a vase, smiled at the observation. Ethan, can I ask you a question? How would you feel if I became an official part of this family? Ethan looked at Michael with his characteristic seriousness, then at Sarah, then at Lily, sleeping. Michael, you already are part of it. I was just waiting for you to realize. Sarah laughed at her son's simple wisdom. At 9 years old, Ethan had shown more emotional intelligence than many adults. That night, when Ethan was sleeping in the next room and Lily was resting in the crib next to Sarah's bed, she and Michael finally talked about the future. Michael, I need you to understand. I will always be a mother first. My children will always come first, Sarah said, setting clear boundaries. Sarah, I wouldn't want it any other way. In fact, seeing how you love Ethan and Lily makes me love you even more, Michael replied sincerely. And what about my career? Habitat Consulting is growing. I have federal commitments. We'll grow together, professionally and personally. I want to support your dreams, not limit them, Michael assured. Sarah looked at Lily, who was sleeping peacefully after a feeding, and felt a deep sense of peace. For the first time in her life, she had everything: family, professional purpose, true love, and the certainty that she had built a solid foundation for her children's future. Michael, there is one condition, Sarah said, smiling. What? I want Ethan to be the best man at our wedding, and Lily will be the youngest flower girl in history, Sarah proposed. Michael laughed, surprised by the marriage proposal coming from her. Sarah, is this a marriage proposal? It's a statement that I'm ready for us to build a life together. Officially, Sarah confirmed. 6 months later, in a simple yet emotional ceremony in the garden of St. Francis Academy, the place where it all began, Sarah and Michael got married. Ethan proudly delivered the rings, and Lily, now 6 months old, slept peacefully in Emma's arms throughout the ceremony. Miss Anderson officiated the ceremony, and in her closing speech she said, "Sarah and Michael have proven that true love doesn't just happen in fairy tales. It happens when two people meet at the right moment, with aligned purposes and open hearts, to build something greater than themselves." Habitat Consulting now occupied an entire floor of a modern building, employed 15 people, and consulted on housing projects in 7 states across the country. Sarah had become a national reference in social housing, but continued to personally assist families seeking her services, always keeping her feet on the ground of her origins. Ethan, now 10 years old, studied at a prestigious private school, but never forgot where he came from. He had become a confident boy, generous with his peers, and showed early signs of talent for engineering. Lily was growing up surrounded by love in a spacious house in Brookline, where every room had been designed by Sarah with the family's needs in mind. At 2 years old, she already displayed a strong personality and insatiable curiosity, traits that promised to make her a force of nature as she grew. At Lily's 2nd birthday party, held in the garden of their new home, Sarah looked around and saw represented there all the phases of her journey. Dr. Smith was talking to Lisa about the new projects of Habitat. Michael taught Emma how to play soccer in the spacious backyard. He held Lily, who was trying to reach colourful balloons hanging from the trees. Ms. Anderson approached Sarah. "How do you feel about all this, Sarah? 2 years after Lily was born, your life is completely different." Sarah smiled, watching the party that celebrated not only her daughter's birthday, but the entire journey of transformation they had experienced. "Ms. Anderson, I've learned that life can change in ways we can't even imagine. The important thing is to be open to recognizing opportunities and having the courage to seize them." "And what is the next dream?" Ms. Anderson asked. Sarah looked at Michael, who noticed her gaze and approached, carrying Lily. "The next dream is to keep building. More homes for families in need, more opportunities for people like I was 3 years ago, and—" Sarah paused, smiling, "maybe another child to complete our family." Michael smiled, kissing Sarah's cheek. "Whatever dream you have, we'll build it together." Lily clapped her hands as if approving her parents' plans. Ethan ran over, sweaty and happy after the soccer game. "What are you guys talking about?" he asked, as curious as ever. "About the future, my love. All the good things we will still experience together," Sarah replied, hugging her son. On that sunny late afternoon, with the house full of friends who had become family and family that had grown even stronger, Sarah Johnson knew she had found her place in the world. Not just as a respected professional or a beloved wife, but as a woman who had turned her most difficult experiences into strength to build a better future for herself and for everyone she touched. The cleaner who sketched houses in the early mornings had become the architect of her own happiness, and of thousands of others who would benefit from her designs in the years to come. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and if you watched until now, comment, "I watched until now," and share your thoughts on this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the final screen. It's going to be very exciting.